Good morning, everyone, and welcome to our next series, Change Management and Leadership Training. Eric Lashley, of course, will continue to be our host here and presenter, and we'll get going. And I would like to thank the Texas State Library and Archives Commission for providing the funding for allowing us to do this training. And with that, I will turn it over to Eric Lashley.
Well, thank you. It's always good to be with Texas librarians again, and I hope that people got a chance to go to TLA last week, and I hope you enjoyed it. And if there's anything you really learned a lot or thought was great, just put it in chat. I think conferences are so great to be with people who are like-minded or doing the same type of work. And it's always good to steal ideas from folks. So again, if you found some great idea at TLA last week, if you went, put it in the chat. So today we're talking about change. Oh, there's so much change going on in this world right now. And it is so stressful. And part of leadership is dealing with change. We talk a lot about change management as what we as leaders want to change, but it's also about reacting to change and leading your staff through this change because it's stressful, and that's part of leadership, is dealing with issues that are uncomfortable. So change management is guiding change to fruition, from concept to resolution. I like the 7 habits again with Covey, begin with the end in mind. Leadership is not about status quo. We've talked about that. Leadership is about managing change. That is the core to leadership. But change, as we know, isn't always good. Climate change is bad. What's happening right now at the federal level with IMLS being eliminated is bad. That's a bad change for us, but we need to react to that. Losing your job is bad. That's not a good change. So change management is about managing the bad things that happen in life, as well as trying to get the good things to happen in your organizations. What I've learned a lot about change, though, is people, they talk about people are resistant to change. Well, people are resistant to change, but they're actually resistant to what they feel is a loss. And that's an emotional thing. When you feel like you have lost something, you're going to be resistant to that. And so again, so what people fear for a loss in a couple of ways, or a couple of things. There are a couple of things they're fearing when we're talking about change and they feel that loss. Number one is safety. They fear they're losing safety, that something is jeopardized, their sense of security, safety, their job. They're afraid they're going to lose their job. This change that's happening is going to impact my job. It's going to impact my way of doing things. Second one is freedom. They feel that this change is going to cause a loss of freedom. You're used to doing a job a certain way, and you're not being micromanaged if you're lucky, and you feel like I've got really freedom and autonomy in how I'm doing my job. And all of a sudden, this change happens and my freedom is gone. You see that right now in the private sector, in the federal government, where people during the pandemic started working remotely. And guess what? They're asking people to come back in the office, and people had a lot of freedom when they worked remotely. And now they feel like that's the biggest resistance, that loss of freedom and flexibility that this change of coming back into the office is causing them. Third is a fear of losing their status. They're afraid that this change is going to change how I'm viewed in the organization or my status within the hierarchy. And that's hard for people. That's a part of their ego, part of their identity. The other one is belonging, the sense of belonging to an organization. When the organization's changing so fast that they feel like this isn't the organization I started with, and my sense of belonging, my team has changed, and that's really hard for them. And the last one, which is really difficult, fairness. They feel like this is unfair. This decision that you've made or this change is unfair. And that is so hard for an organization to deal with on an individual level. My dad, oh my God, God bless him, he used to say, whoever told you life was fair? And I used to hate when he said that, but it's true. It's like, everybody has this sense of fairness, and even children have this sense of fairness. And once you feel like that the organization or the change is unfair, it's really hard for you to embrace that change. So change impacts people's identities. And we need to know that resistance to change is about, they feel they're losing something. Everybody's for change when you're winning. Like if you're winning, get a big raise and a promotion, and everybody's all for that. Get a new building, yeah, we're all for that, because that's something you feel like you're winning. But a lot of changes, that feeling of loss for your employees, and you need to address that. So when you're doing this, you need to realize there's this feeling of loss a lot of times when there's change, and you need to address it on the human level. And what you need to do, though, is you go through it, but you also emphasize what's staying the same, because people do like that consistency. Like, I am not losing my job. Okay, start with that. You're not losing your job, because that right off the bat, that touches their safety and security, that, okay, I'm going to get a check for 40 hours this week or 20 hours or whatever. And then you just kind of go from that. The hardest is the fairness. And I'll give you an example. So we've got a major change here in Burbank. We have a new senior librarian that we've just hired, and that position has been vacant for 2 years. And so we're bringing in a new person, so that's change. Senior librarian, so this is a supervisory position. So people are like, oh, I got a new supervisor. This person actually has to work somewhere, so we have to put them in an office. Guess what? We have to put them in an office where someone is currently located, and it creates this domino effect where multiple people are going to have to move. Now, again, if you look at this logically, you go, yes, we have a new person. They have to work somewhere. They need to be in an office because they're a supervisor. And we should put people who supervise next to their staff, because right now we have people who are across the building, and yet their staff works in a workroom. Very logical, right? Well, I'm no fool. I've done this long enough to know that all the things I just talked about, safety, freedom, status, belonging, and fairness, is all going to come up when I unroll this change. Now, on the logical, they know that, yep, we have to have a supervisor. They have to be in an office. Someone's got to give. But why is it me? So the fairness is going to come up. But what I need to do is emphasize what stays the same. 1, you don't lose your job. 2, you get an extra person in the building, so now they can cover the desk and do other things. You're not losing your coworkers. Everybody's staying in the same building, so that sense of belonging is still there. But I know this is, a very logical change, but change is hard for people, and there's some people that are going to feel a loss. So again, me emphasizing what stays the same is going to be really important to make this change happen. So again, we talked about why people are resistant to change, or that feeling of loss. And now I'm going to talk a little bit about, once you've made a decision or you feel like you need to make a change in your organization, what's the best way to move forward? So there's a guy named John Cotter who is really kind of the guru on change management. He's written a lot of books and articles about change management. And the first thing he talks about is, again, creating a sense of urgency. I frame this a little bit differently. Mine is, you have to identify a problem. You can't change without, 1, identifying a problem or a goal. But here's the key. You have to actually get people to agree that there's a problem or a goal, or else that resistant change is almost immediate. So again, if you feel like, hey, we need to improve customer service and all that, if your staff don't feel like customer service needs to be improved, or they don't see that we're doing anything wrong, it's hard for them to even buy into, we need to improve customer service. So you have to, again, start identifying and agreeing that these are problems. How do we make this work? Second step is forming a guiding coalition. These are the folks that everybody, if you're especially in a large organization, you have these early adopters, these innovators that are always the first to try something new. And Simon Sinek talks about this and about the law of diffusion of innovation, the bell curve, where organization, you always have those innovators and early adopters in your organization. They're going to be the first one to have the newest iPhone and the newest whatever, the newest technology. They go to those movies before anybody else goes to those movies. They're the people that do it. And then you have the early majority, the late majority, and then you have the laggards. I always call those the dinosaurs. They're not changing until evolution forces them to change. They're just not going to change. They're still using a typewriter at this point. They don't do email. Those are the laggards. But to do change, your focus should actually be on those innovators and those early adopters. If you can get them to buy into what change needs to happen, they will help lead the change. And it's so important not to waste your time on everybody, because not everybody's going to be at the same speed. The innovators and early adopters are really quick, and focus on them. They'll help you work through the process. They'll help you form a strategic vision and initiatives. As you're going through that and you're starting to plan a plan or create a plan for change, look at all of the things that are the barriers to this change. What are your processes, your system set up? What is it doesn't even make sense, but you want to improve X, customer service, but this policy is in the way, this barrier is in the way. And start removing those barriers. Start really looking at the problem and then start removing barriers. And then some staff will throw up barriers too. Let's face it, they will come up with any excuse not to change. But a lot of times just think of, why are we doing this, or why do we do what we do? And a lot of times there's no reason for it, or you can't even remember why you made those decisions. As you're going through change, it's so important to generate what I call the low-hanging fruit, the short-term wins, something that's easy to win. Because again, you don't want to do this revolutionary change, and it is so stressful for people. But having short-term wins makes a lot of sense, and they can start buying into the early the middle folks in that bell curve will start accepting the change by having some proven wins, the low-hanging fruit. And then once you get momentum going, don't give up. You have to sustain the acceleration of change, and then you institute the change. And then what does that mean, though? You've made the change, you've created a new policy, or you're having good results on customer service or whatever, but you review your progress. You do a postmortem. What worked? What didn't work? Where did we have to pivot? Where did we have to adjust? And guess what? You continue to adjust. You continuously improve. You continuously look at the process and how it goes. And you change as needed. So there's another thing I want to talk about is when you launch a change, you need to know where your organization is in what I call their maturity, or in their stage of development. Every organization goes through these different stages, and I didn't realize that you really need to know this, where you're at in terms of your organization. This could be your city, this could be just the library, or even your community. Where are you in this developmental stage? And that helps determine what do you need to do and change, or what strategies you need to take to actually make change. So there's a group, the Harwood Institute talks a lot about, it's community engagement, community looking outward. There's a whole thing they did on community engagement for libraries. But one of the things they work with cities also. And one of the things I really liked is they have this stages of organizations. And it's really important. If you're in one stage, you can't, change management's not going to work in that stage. So let me list the stages. And as we do this, think about where your city is, or where your organization, what stage are you in? And that may help determine how fast you can implement change, or what you need to do to make change. So there are basically 5 stages for organizations. And the first one is the waiting place. And that's where I was when I came here to Burbank. So I came here in December, and what I found were people were stuck. People had little energy. They're waiting for change. They really wanted to change, but they couldn't agree on what change there was or what was the problem that was causing them to be stuck. And a lot of organizations are in this. They were like, well, if we just get a new city manager, if we just get a new library director, if we just get a new whatever, then we can change. But they're stuck, and you have to ask, well, why are they stuck? What is causing them to be stuck? And unfortunately, in that waiting stage, they really don't know. They just can't put their finger on what's happening. But when you're doing change management at that point, you cannot rush to action. Because again, nobody's agreeing on what the problem is. And you got to agree that this is the problem. Sometimes it is personnel, and that's tough. It's that person that's causing us to be stuck. That leader is causing us to be stuck. That city council, that mayor is causing us to be stuck. You don't want to create, comprehensive solutions. You got to have to earn trust. We've talked about trust a million times. So if you're especially a new leader coming into an organization like me, I had to earn trust. And for me, I was in what I kept telling people for the first 3 months, my listening and learning stage. I'm not making any changes unless I just desperately have to make change. So I'm listening to them. And I'm at that point now where I'm actually having a staff meeting today. And I'm going to say, guys, I've heard you. I know what happened in the past. I know y'all were upset about the previous director. I'm not that director. And I appreciate knowing that history, but we've got to turn the page and we need to move forward. And, I'm not, here are the steps we're going to take. But we were in that waiting stage. The second one is the impasse. This is where people can name what's wrong. They know what's wrong. And they say enough is enough. This is when you start seeing a lot of people start really complaining. It becomes out in the open of what the problem is. So they're at that impasse where they know what's wrong. They're vocalizing what's wrong. However, they don't agree on how to solve what's wrong. They know what's wrong, but they don't know there's not 100% agreement on what to do. And so that's a tough one to be in. The good news, again, same thing. Start building trust. Don't make rash decisions at that point. Start, as we talked about, the low-hanging fruit, start making some wins. Start addressing what is wrong, being honest about what is wrong, and then making tough decisions on making those corrections. The next phase, which I really like, is the catalytic phase, where, man, things are starting to happen. Okay, you've kind of turned the corner there where you've identified what's wrong. You're addressing those issues. Things are starting to happen. People can see change. People are getting the energy that when they're in that waiting, when they're in low energy, with a catalytic, they're starting to have energy. And I'm feeling that way here in Burbank, that we're starting to get there. Again, I haven't even made any major changes yet. It's just, again, listening to them, respecting people, gaining their trust, and they're ready to start making some changes. But you still have to worry about in the catalytic phase about doing too much too fast. So again, there is the change comes in evolution, which is the incremental change, which most people are okay with. And that's what and there is revolutionary change, which is like overnight. There's a new regime. There's a new system. We're going to break the world economy. We're going to do tariffs, whatever it is. That is like revolution. Let's break it and then we'll build it back. And as y'all know, revolutions do succeed at times. This country was founded on a revolution. Wasn't perfect, but again, it does succeed at times. But people are really uncomfortable with the revolutionary change. So the next one is you get to the point where things are going well. You're at the growth where you're doing widespread forward. The movement is moving forward. Things are going well. The high energy. people feel that they're on the right path. People want to work for your organization. They feel like a lot of the issues are being addressed. There's still maybe some other deep understanding issues, but you're mature enough to have really good conversations where people don't, start breaking up into divisive groups because you're bringing up tough issues. So you're matured enough that you're growing it, but you're also, the biggest fear at that point is you're having some success and you rest on your laurels. That's always the biggest fear. You're like, we're the best, we're doing great. And that's the big fear. However, when you're in that moment, you're mature enough to start doing some really good changes and maintaining, again, not status quo. You're moving forward. And then you get to the most mature stage, which is sustain and renew, where you have done really well. And you've really become a good, mature organization. Things are running well. Decisions are done well, where you don't have as much resistance because you've built in that trust and that security for your staff. You can, though, at this point, have tensions between what I say the veteran staff and new staff. There's always this tension a lot of times between people who've been there a long while with the newcomers come in who have new energy and new ideas. And it's really difficult to merge those two at times, because the old timers will say, we tried that. If an idea comes in, which is one of the worst things you can say to a new person, because you're kind of crushing their enthusiasm. And it's very negative for them to hear, well, we tried that and it failed and we don't want to try it again, or whatever the idea is. And so again, it's really a real balance to manage veteran staff and new staff. So again, you want to build on to make room for those new leaders. You want to encourage leadership, and you want to build leadership and mature, and then you start all over again. But as you know, things can change, things can crumble, and you go from a sustain and renew back to the waiting place where something happens. You get a new city manager, new council, new mayor, new board of directors, whatever it is, that things change and you're back to that place. So, but each step is a little bit different in how you deal with change. So the other one I want to talk about is, again, the biggest part I've seen in libraries is the change is difficult, and we wait for change. And I always call it change by retirement or change by funeral. You're waiting for that person to leave, or you're waiting for that person, if they're a board member or mayor or someone, you're waiting for them to leave, or you're waiting for them to die. And you're kind of stuck in that waiting place where you need to make a change, but you're just so resistant because you don't want to upset that person. And, here in Burbank, they had that for years, where they had like a finance director, and they, again, did not believe in technology. And so our technology is just really old school when it comes to our financial software. And it was because, again, they were just waiting for this person to retire. Well, that person kept hanging in there, and it really impacted the organization negatively. And that you just can't have that. So waiting for someone to retire, waiting for someone to leave, or wait is never a really good strategy. And again, you need to figure out, again, how to make that person feel comfortable with the change. And the fact is, some of them will never feel comfortable with the change. But you have to that's part of leadership, make those tough decisions to, get them to go where they need to go. So the hard part, I guess, is what I would say is, what change. I'm hoping that people will comment here or put some comments in the chat. What change is out there that is concerning you, and what strategies do you think we should take to help manage this change? A good change, a bad change. So if anybody has a change that's facing them in their organization right now, please either speak up or put it in the chat, and we can talk about it. All right. None. All right, Heather. Heather writes, we're looking at changing our whole organizational structure. Heather, can you get on and just tell us a little bit of what do you mean by that? And are you in a city or nonprofit or library district or county? What type of system are you in?
See. All right, can you hear me?
We can hear you.
All right, so we are in a municipality, and we got a new director last year. And this has been great in a lot of ways because our old director was very change resistant. I liked her a lot, but there were a lot of things that she was hesitant to do. And our new director has been change all of the things. So she's moved a little bit fast for some people, but we've gotten a lot of staff on board. We did our strategic plan as a whole staff, coming up with what's important to our community and what our goals are and what we want to do about things. But now she's talking about changing our structure so that we are not so siloed. We have our youth services, we have our adult services, we have our circulation, we have our tech services, and we're currently working on cross-training everyone so that anyone can basically be anywhere and answer any question, but it's a little bit hard to see how some things are going to work with what she's envisioning of how our changes in organization is going to be. So she's looking at having like processes be one facet where people are working on the processes in the organization. Some people are primarily just programming. Some people are primarily just public service and helping patrons. And right now, everybody kind of does a little bit of everything. So that's our big, discussion right now is how would this work and what will it look like?
That's awesome. And so again, I like, again, cross training, and I like that people have someone back up. However, so you're talking about a big change for your organization. So looking at the sense of loss or that where it's safety, freedom, status, belonging, fairness, what would you suggest to her, or is it he or she?
She.
Mm-hmm. What would you suggest to her in terms of dealing with if staff are feeling those loss of safety, freedom, status, belonging, or in fairness? How would you propose to her, like, hey, we have to deal with this. These are issues that people are feeling. How would you propose to her, like, moving forward, it's a good idea logically, right? Logically, this makes sense.
Yeah.
How to deal with people and how they feel their identities in the organization. I was the children's librarian, that's my identity. How do you what advice would you give her moving forward with this change, knowing that that's why people are resistant to change?
Right. I'm thinking that people need some reassurance that they're not going to be, it almost I think feels for some people that they're just going into a different silo. And I think they need some reassurance that if you are, say, primarily a public service person, that doesn't mean you will never be doing programs, because there are some people who really enjoy both being on desk and being in programs, and they don't want to give up either one of those things. So I think that is that will address that you're not necessarily losing anything when we reorganize everyone. You're still going to be, helping people. You're still going to be involved in various things in the library, but we're going to have some different focuses that are going to make it, I guess I would say, like, easier for you to do the things that you're strong in.
Right.
So,
You playing to someone's strengths versus putting them in a job where their weaknesses, and then they're feeling stressed out and feeling like they're going to fail. So it sounds again like your new director did some really good things where they were involving the staff in the strategic plan. I think that is key, so that there's a feeling of buy-in originally, and again, I think letting them know that we want to buy into the way we're going. We like the plan. We like where it's going. However, we're human beings, and there's going to be this feeling of loss, and dealing with it openly and honestly. I've been very, because I'm a new director here, been very appreciative of how honest people have been with me about certain things. But I'm also like, here's one that I had to, again, there was this feeling of loss, where they were installing new self-check terminals. And they were adding more self-check terminals. And there was a real fear from some of the staff that they were going to lose their job, that these self-check terminals were going to cause them to lose their job, and I kept saying, no, first of all, I need to just say, you're not losing your job because we have self-check terminals. Okay, let's make the safety part right off the bat. You're not losing your job. You're still doing these things. So I'm showing them how some things aren't changing. And, what I wanted them to say is, people choice is a good thing for patrons. They can choose to chit chat with us, or they can choose to check out their books and get the heck out. And guess what? Most people choose to check out their books and get the heck out. And I said, but the good thing about that is the ones who choose to talk to you, you can now spend quality time with them and have that relationship that you can build. But when you take away that choice, you're forcing everybody to come to you and do a little task that they can do themselves. Nobody, or very few people now, go into the convenience store to pay for gas. Everybody buys gas at the pump. The days of going in and paying, or having a guy come out and pump your gas, those days are gone. And libraries need to move on that. And so for me, it was like, what are they telling me? They're telling me there's a fear that they're losing something. They're losing their job, that their whole job was checking books in and out. And I think, well, first of all, your job should be more than just a transaction of checking books in and out. But again, for me, again, it was logical. We're actually going to save them time, and they can spend more time with the patrons who want this. But that wasn't what they were hearing. And I was glad they were being honest with me so I could then address those fears. And I think that's the one thing, creating that trust and having a place where people can honestly tell you to your face, like, oh, Eric, you're going down the wrong road. And you're like, well, why do you think I'm going down the wrong road? And I may be going down the wrong road. But there are times where I'm not going down the wrong road, and I just need to know their fear is losing their job, and, such and such. So I'm actually going, this is the same thing you're doing. So I'm really interesting where we have a reference desk and circulation desk where nobody is cross-trained at all. So my librarians literally do not know how to check out a book. And and the people who work the circulation desk can't put books on hold for people. So they have to go to the reference. It's just like this bizarre, and I'm like, what are y'all doing? But again, this is the way it was. This was our job, don't stick in your lane. And I'm like, I'm breaking the lane, I'm just completely exploding it. But anyway, but I have to go through and understand what is their feeling of loss and how can I alleviate that? Because logically, we all just know this doesn't make any sense, but there's something there. And we all are human beings, and it's the human dynamic which makes it hard. Mm-hmm. That was a great example. Anybody else that has a change that's happening at your organization? Oh, Heather, let me ask you one more question. So what stage do you think y'all were in? Were y'all in the waiting stage, catalytic, or, you know, where do you think your organization was and where do you think you are now?
So in terms of changing our organizational structure, this, that conversation really hasn't gotten past the leadership team. Because I would say we're at an impasse on how it's going to work and kind of where are people going to fit in. So we're kind of there for a lot of things. I would say when it comes to the rest of what we're doing and the rest of the changes that we've been making, I think we're starting to enter the growth stage. There are a lot of goals that we've been meeting, and we've been meeting them really quickly because everybody is kind of on board and working towards the same goals. We just recently started checking people out and giving library cards in our children's wing, which did not used to do that, and there was a really big fear that if we did start doing that, then we would not be able to help with readers advisory and those kinds of questions because we would be too busy checking people out. And we now have a plan for the first time this summer. We're going to have a CERC person in the children's wing who will also be there doing that so that we can help with, because we get extremely busy during the summer all day long. We're going to have another person over there, and they're going to be there all summer long to help out instead of it just being one person on desk. So it's really like everybody is moving forward on this, and I think the organizational part, it'll get there.
Well, you've pointed out a couple of things too. You've gotten some small wins. So the wins are building confidence. You know, like I said, do you want to win? Winning feels good. You know, losing feels bad. But again, you can see that you're starting to gain confidence. But even then, you know, checking out books in the children's room, which y'all have never done before. Think about that. You've now divided the workload. And you've given people a choice. People now can choose. I can check out my books at the front desk, or I can check out my books in the kids' room. You know, choice is good. So customer service wise, that's a great change.
And that was why we did it, because we had self-checkouts, but if they were blocked for any reason, we couldn't do anything for them over there. They would have to go into the main library with all of their children and all of the books that they had already picked out. And it was just it was poor customer service to make them go all that way with their kiddos when we could help them right where they were. So I think it's been really, really positive for everybody.
And that's the model I'm moving to, is like everything. When someone walks up to one desk, they can get just about everything taken care of right there. We're so funny here where they had this lack of technology where the only way that you can pay with a credit card is actually go to the self-check. So they don't even have credit card at the desk. So you actually force people. So the one that they didn't want, the self-check, now it's the only way people can pay by credit card, which doesn't make any sense. So that's one low-hanging fruit that I will change, that we'll have credit card machines at each desk. So that was a great example. Yeah, I give you applause. Any other library out there that is, again, facing some major changes that you would like to, you know, discuss at this time? I see that Dorothy is like, everything's just perfect in her organization.
You know very well it's not perfect. Nobody has it perfect. But we're a small staff, so I'm kind of jealous. She has wings. I have one big floor, so there isn't a whole lot of going on and back and forth. Um, the previous city manager did give us a self-check because he didn't want to add to the current staff. And so somebody somewhere, it was before me, I didn't have any part of this conversation, and I doubt my predecessor did either, that thought that by having that self-check, we didn't have to have a new person. So that was that. But we're a small town. I mean, they'd rather come to and talk to us and have that interaction. The people that use our self-check are primarily kids, because it's something different. They have some control over it. Parents of the kids that are using the self-check. I have very few patrons that they primarily only use the self-check. And we take no credit cards anywhere, so we don't have to worry about that. We're actually probably, I would say, in our stage of maturity, between 4 and 5. No, just kidding. Sustainability.
Okay.
The 5 would be retirement, which would be me. So, we're not there yet. So we're in 4. And I do have a problem with we're not siloed per se, but I do have a staff member that, what she does, I really can't have the other ones do, because I can't trust that they're going to do it to the same level. So that's something that you have to consider. The continuity of the process and who you have cross-training to what. I mean, the ideal thing would be to have everybody cross-trained in everything, but if you're not, it's kind of hard to pay to all those strengths if they don't have them to begin with.
Right. Well, again,
So that's a limitation.
Cross-training me to be a cataloger would be a disaster. And my catalogers in the past would all be shaking their head like,
They're like, no, keep him out of there. Yes, I know.
Yeah, keep me out of there.
Yes, and that's how we feel for the interlibrary loan, because it can have a trickle-down effect. And then because we're also having issues because we have, a new interlibrary loan system that's really not working. And so there's that. And to put somebody else in the mix at this point to cross-train them would be disaster with the current staff that I have. It'd be more frustrating than it is now. So, I mean, I totally, like I said, you guys, you have a wing, you have a children's ring, and we all do everything as far as reference and checking in and checking out a book, because we're only 4 people in our staff, and that includes me. Right. So there isn't a whole lot of that, what you described. But I am very much, when I go into a new situation, I learn the lay of the land before I make any changes. And that does build trust on its own. Yep. Because you're not, when I came here, they got rid of a longtime director. She'd been here for like 25 years, hired somebody, and she only lasted 3 months. And then I came, and there was only one staff member left when I came. Wow. So, and she was in fear for her job because they had cleaned house. The previous city manager had cleaned house, starting with the director. So it was very hard for her because she was trying to balance what the old director, what she had done, and she hadn't really she was the youngest one in tenure and responsibility, and then she was the only one that was left. So there were things that she had to pick up to learn, and interlibrary learn was one of them, and summer reading. It happened in the summer. So she had to do all of that by herself. She ran the library by herself for a month before in between directors. Wow. So I had to get her on board with trust right away. And and also so she could tell me some of the things that, all libraries are the same but different. It's like Coke and Pepsi, the different loan periods and all the little things, even though we use the same ILS. So that was a plus. I didn't have to learn a new ILS. I was very familiar with the ILS and just those things. But I also had to build her trust right away because she was feeling very vulnerable and all the other things that we talked about in the previous stages. I needed to get her trust. And then the others, I had somebody start the same day I did. And they didn't even tell her I was starting, and let alone the other person was starting. And then the other person that started said, how come your desk is way over there and my desk is over here with her? So I had explained, well, because I'm the director and we just happened to start on the same day.
But you
So there
couldn't
were
see,
all
she was
these
talking about
changes.
fairness. Why should the director have a better desk than, or an office?
So
or
she just
whatever?
went because she saw that there were 4 workstations and yet
Mhm.
I was separated from them. So,
Mhm.
there was that first, I had to say, well, no. And like I said, poor Gina didn't even know I was starting, let alone another person was starting. And they certainly didn't tell me that another person was starting the same day that I was. So there was all, they don't need to tell us people, that, how we're
Well,
involved.
you were definitely in the rebuilding stage at that point. There's only
Yes, I
one
was
employee
definitely, I
left.
know, and the change between the with the retirement and funeral, well, that happened like from one day to the next. I mean, they literally came in and said to the long-standing director, "You retire today, or we'll fire you tomorrow." And so they walked out with her that day. So
So,
yeah, it was a mess.
yeah, and it probably there were things years in the making for that. And that's,
Oh yeah, it didn't happen overnight. It was just one of those things that happened. And then somebody was fired, somebody left for medical reasons, and that was what. And then, of course, the director they hired for those 3 months, well, she didn't gel, and got into an argument with her immediate supervisor, and quit on the spot. And yeah,
well, the smaller the organization, the bigger the personnel issues are. And even when people know that the best thing is a change in leadership, it still stresses them out because they go,
sure. I mean,
"What
and that's
does it mean to me?"
well,
And
and the city manager said because he came in and he cleaned house, and then I come in and I had to mend all these bridges that I didn't even know. And that lady was only here for 3 months, and she got sideways with the Friends group, the DAR, and the Women's Club.
Yeah.
In 3 months. And I didn't
it should have
know
been
that.
in the listening and learning, or just
No, she went in balls blazing. Sorry. Just like, I'm going to make all these changes instead of learning the lay of the land first.
Yeah.
She wanted to make a lot of changes. Now, I'm not saying that some of the changes that she wanted to make weren't good,
Yeah.
but she also should have known that some of the changes weren't going to happen overnight, like she wanted. So that didn't help her situation at all.
Well, for me, the previous director who left under bad terms made some great changes that they needed. They were behind, and she made some really good best practices. However, it was the implementation where she didn't build trust. She didn't get people's buy-in, like Heather, where she didn't have the staff help.
And the buy-in is so important.
Oh, you can't
the
do
buy-in
it.
is so important, because
that's
if
why
you don't
for
have
me-
that, they're going to be
Yeah.
nitpicking at you.
Right. So like for me, I have this new staff member coming in. She's coming from Indianapolis. So this is a big change for her. And I want her first couple of days really smooth. And the first thing I need her workspace cleared out so that she has a new office, which is clean and, and I don't want the staff to hold that against her. That's my decision. It's not her decision what desk and office she's in.
And you don't want to put her in a position where she feels like she usurped somebody,
right,
out of their space.
Yes. And I know that I'm not an idiot, that is probably going to happen. And I need to do the best job I can. This is my leadership on the line in some ways. It's like, I've got to reassure them,
But the other thing is that position was open for 2 years. So they had to have known that eventually the position was going to be filled.
That's the logic part.
Yeah, part. Well, that isn't always.
No, I know that but I think going into them, even admitting that I know that, because they're going to be happy that they have another staff member. They're going to be happy that this person now can cover desk that,
interfere some of their workload.
Yeah, that's the way I need to take it. And it's like, here are the benefits of this person coming in. Yes. And, and I need to give that logic case. Like, she's got to sit somewhere. And it does make sense that she gets the office that is here. And then that means that this person needs to move. And that also then means, because that's a supervisor, needs to move in, the non-supervisors need to move in a different area because they don't supervise. All logical, but I just know, that some of these folks, they've been here a long time and they feel somehow they've gained this status, even though they're not a supervisor. They've been here 25 years, but they're not a supervisor. And somehow they think that longevity should grant them this status, which is on their status. They're afraid that so I have to show them that you're not losing your status. You're not losing your coworkers. You're just moving from one side of the building to the other. And the office is exactly the same size, but I know it's going to be hard. I'm not a fool. And so I know that instead of just saying it's my way or the highway, which never works, I'm not going to get the buy-in. I'm going to get the buy-in from most of the staff. I just know there's one staff member, again, the veteran that's been there a long time, who's just going to be a little grumpy, but I'll give him other, awards here and there to make it smooth. But I know I'm not a fool. I'm not going into this thinking it's going to be just, everybody's going to be happy.
It's peachy.
Yeah. Okay. I've got to run to a staff meeting, but this was great. I think we meet, Jeffrey, do we meet again next week?
Yes, let me double check and make sure, but I do believe we do. Let's see. Stand by for just a second here.
I know that TLA kind of threw us off a little bit.
Yeah, I think we meet again on. Yes, the 16th.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you guys. I've really appreciated it. I got my heart for you Texas librarians. Y'all are tough as nails, and you do more with less, and you do great work for your community. So thank you, and I'll see you next week.
Thanks, everybody. Have a good day today. Thank you for attending.
Thanks, Jeffrey.
See you next week.